My boss fired me for underperforming despite bringing 40% of revenue. Next day would be fun. We need hungrier talent who can meet higher targets, Brian said as he slid the termination papers across the polished conference table. The company is moving in a new direction. My name is Darren McCabe. I'm 46 years old, and for the last 9 years, I've been a senior account executive at Triana Corp in Kansas City, Missouri. Nearly a decade of work, and my client portfolio accounted for almost 40% of the company's revenue. No shortcuts, just long days, constant travel, and relationships built on trust. I didn't argue. I smiled, thanked him for the opportunity, and walked out. Brian Ellsworth had been with the company for only 6 months. He came in as our new vice president of sales, hired by the CEO to reinvigorate the team. He wore custom suits, spoke in recycled motivational phrases, and never once joined me on a client call. Within 3 weeks, he rolled out a new commission structure that cut my earnings by 20%, despite my numbers being consistently strong. The writing had been on the wall. My desk was moved to a corner during office renovations. My name disappeared from meeting invites. Yesterday, I noticed IT was servicing my computer while I was out at lunch. Small things, easy to brush off, but together, they told me everything I needed to know. I packed 9 years into a single cardboard box. A few family photos, a coffee mug my daughter had painted, a folder of client contact information I'd kept separate from the company database. Just habit, really. Need help with that? Valerie from accounting asked as I walked by. She looked genuinely confused. Are you changing offices? Something like that. I replied, not wanting to make a scene. In the elevator, I stood next to Everett Stanton, our CEO. He nodded absently, eyes glued to his phone, completely unaware of what Brian had just done, or what it would mean for quarterly projections. He'd find out soon enough. Walking to my car, I didn't feel anger, just a strange sense of clarity, like waking up from a long, comfortable dream only to realize the house was never really yours to begin with. I drove home in silence. No music, no calls, just the steady hum of the road and the thought of tomorrow, and my phone buzzed just as I pulled into the driveway. It was a text from Travis Ricks, my biggest client. The annual contract renewal was coming up next week, and he'd messaged me about dinner reservations for when he'd be in town. He didn't know yet. Nobody did. I set the phone on the kitchen counter without answering and stared out the window. 9 years of client relationships, all built on my word and my reliability. Brian hadn't just fired an employee today. He'd cut the single thread tying Trevant to millions in revenue. And the worst part? He had no idea. I've been with the company since before the rebrand, back when it was still Midwestern Financial Services, before the sleek new office downtown. Everett himself had hired me straight from a competitor where I'd been hitting targets, but constantly getting passed over for promotion. I want someone who knows this market, he'd told me. Someone clients trust. For 7 years, that trust was well placed. I grew our client base from local businesses to national accounts. I extended contract from 1-year terms to 3 and 5. I brought in Lockhart Manufacturing after they walked away from our biggest rival. I secured the Henderson Group when no one thought we stood a chance. My wife, Rebecca, used to joke that I was married to my clients. Thursday night, dinner with the Johnsons again? She'd ask, already knowing the answer. The kids got used to me missing ball games and recitals. Dad's working became their normal. And every time, I promised it would be worth it someday. And for a while it was. 3 promotions, 2 office expansions, 1 recession weathered. Trevant grew from a $4 million company into a $30 million enterprise. My accounts alone made up nearly $12 million of that. Nobody had run the numbers that precisely until Brian arrived. The first red flag came during a quarterly review about 3 months after he took over sales. He pointed to a chart like he was unveiling some grand discovery. Your client acquisition rate has flatlined, he said. Because I'm focused on expanding existing relationships, I explained. The Lockhart contract just doubled. The future is in new business, Brian kept insisting. We need hunters, not farmers. A week later, my executive assistant, Julia, was reassigned. The month after that, my travel request suddenly needed extra approval. Expense reports came back with questions. Small things, minor inconveniences at first. But together, they felt like death by 1,000 cuts. Then came the whispers. Word was spreading about fresh talent being interviewed. Young MBAs with flashy pitches and zero real-world experience. Brian called them disruptors. Last month, he brought in Alicia Winters, 29, fresh from a tech startup. During her first week, she was assigned to sit in on a call with my biggest client, Travis Ricks. No explanation, no introduction, just tossed in as if she were shadowing me. Travis noticed immediately. After the call, he texted me. "Who's the new girl? Are you training your replacement?" I laughed it off, told her we were just expanding the team. But driving home that night, I felt something in my gut. A shift. The kind of certainty you only get from years of reading boardrooms and client faces. Something wasn't right. I should have trusted that feeling sooner. That night, I set a cardboard box on the kitchen counter and poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon. The house was quiet. Rebecca was in Denver helping her sister with a new baby. Probably for the best. I needed silence to think. I pulled out my personal phone and scrolled through my contacts. 9 years worth of relationships. Over 200 clients, vendors, and industry connections. People who trusted me. People who signed with Trevant because of who I was, not because of our corporate marketing or that fancy downtown office. My work phone, now dead in the box, only held the official records. Emails, invoices, contracts. But all the personal touches, the dinner invitations, the golf outings, the private cell numbers of CEOs and decision makers, those were on my phone. My phone, the one no one could touch. I took a sip of bourbon and felt something I hadn't expected. Calm. Not panic, not desperation over the mortgage or health insurance, just clarity. A sharp understanding of what had happened and what needed to happen next. The bourbon burned going down, and with it came the weight of 9 years. 60-hour weeks. Missed family dinners. Little league games I never saw. All the sacrifices I thought were building my future, only to learn it was never really mine. I opened my laptop and pulled up my employment contract. The non-compete clause was there but limited. 1 year, only if I left voluntarily. But I hadn't. I'd been terminated. That changed everything. There was nothing stopping me from taking my clients elsewhere. Just then, my phone buzzed again. A message from Travis. Dinner reservation confirmed for Thursday. Looking forward to discussing the renewal. I stared at Travis's message for a long time. He represented $1.7 million in annual business for Trevant. His company, Lockhart Manufacturing, had been with me for 6 years, and before that, 3 years at my previous firm. Nearly a decade of trust built between us. And he wasn't the only one. The Henderson Group, Westfield Properties, Carlton Industries, together another $1.5 million in revenue. All of them had contract renewals coming up in the next 30 days. All of them dealt exclusively through me. I set my glass down and made a decision. Tonight, I wouldn't call anyone. I wouldn't send angry emails, and I wouldn't make threats. I'd sleep on it. Tomorrow, clear-headed, I make exactly 3 phone calls. Not to vent, not to persuade, just to let my closest clients know I was no longer with Trevant. The rest would take care of itself. I unpacked the family photos from my box, my daughter's graduation, my son's wedding, the Yellowstone trip we nearly canceled because of a client emergency. I missed too much already. Tomorrow, I'd start making different choices. I finished my bourbon, went upstairs, and for the first time in years, I didn't set an alarm. No early flights. No quarterly reports to review before dawn. Just the calm certainty that Brian Ellsworth had made a catastrophic mistake, and all I had to do was step aside and let it play out. The next morning, I made my 3 calls. No dramatics, just facts. Travis, I'm no longer with Trevant as of yesterday. Wanted you to hear it from me directly. His response was immediate. What happened? Who's handling our account now? Brian Ellsworth will probably reach out. Or maybe Alicia Winters. A long pause. The girl from a meeting? She doesn't know our business. That's all I can tell you, I said. The rest is your decision. I had similar conversations with James Henderson and Peter Carlton. No pressure, no recruitment pitch. Just the straightforward reliability they'd always known me for. By noon, my personal phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Other clients had already heard. This industry had a way of spreading news fast. At 2 p.m., Everett Stan called. I'll let go to voicemail. Darren, this is Everett. We need to talk about your transition. Several clients are expressing concerns. Please call me back immediately. I didn't. Instead, I drove downtown to meet with Lawrence Finch, an employment attorney. Years back, I'd helped his son-in-law secure financing for a restaurant. He owed me a favor. They can't stop you from working, Lawrence said after reviewing my termination papers. But they'll try to scare your clients away. Be ready for that. By 4 p.m., Trevant's legal department had already emailed me a reminder about confidentiality obligations. By 5, Brian texted, "Let's discuss your exit package. There might be room for consulting work." Too late. At 5:30, my phone buzzed again. "Travis, I just got off a call with your CEO and that VP who fired you," he said. "They promised continuity. Told me Alicia would handle everything personally. Then they dangled a 10% discount on renewal." "What did you tell them?" I asked. "That I'd think about it," he replied. Then, after a pause, "But I already sent notice terminating our contract, citing change in relationship management." Henderson and Carlton did the same. I stayed silent. "Darren, where are you landing? Because wherever you go, that's where our business is going too." That night, 3 more companies from my portfolio sent termination notices to Trevant. By morning, the total was 8. Over $3.2 million in contract gone. Julia, my former assistant, texted me from the chaos. "Complete meltdown here. Brian's trying to pin this on you. CEO demanding answers, board scrambling." Not long after, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. "Darren McCabe. Michael Grantley here. Grantley and Company. We've heard you're available, and several of our mutual contacts speak highly of you. I'm listening. Senior VP position. 6-figure signing bonus. Full autonomy to manage your own accounts. A seat on our executive committee. When would you want to start? How's tomorrow sound?" I accepted on the spot, not out of desperation, but because it was exactly what I'd wanted all along: respect, autonomy, and recognition for the value I brought. That afternoon, Brian texted again. Board approved a retention package. 6 months, full salary plus stock options. Just help us transition your accounts. I didn't reply. They'd had 9 years to value what I built. Now, they were scrambling to put a price on it after the fact. Too little. Far too late. A week into my new role at Grantley, Julia called from her personal phone. "You need to know what really happened," she said. I leaned back in my new corner office, larger than the one I'd had at Trevant, and listened as 9 years of history suddenly came into focus. They were planning to sell the firm, Julia explained. Veritas Capital made an offer 2 months ago, but with conditions. They wanted their own account managers for the big clients, integrated into their portfolio companies. Brian wasn't brought in to grow sales. He was brought in to detach clients from you, to make them company assets instead of relationships tied to a single executive. I felt the pieces click into place. My termination hadn't been about performance. It had been preparation for acquisition. "How do you know this?" I asked. "I'm still assigned to the executive suite," she said. "I see the documents, hear the conversations. Yesterday, they pulled the offer. Veritas won't buy without the client base you built." When the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. 9 years of loyalty, and they've been willing to cut me out like a middleman. Not because I'd failed, but because I'd succeeded too well. The relationships were too strong, too personal. Trevant needed me gone before they could repackage my clients as corporate assets. I opened my laptop and checked my email. More messages from former clients. The industry was buzzing with the news. Darren McCabe had joined Grantley, and clients were following him. In just 5 days, Trevant stock had dropped 12%. My phone buzzed with a text from Everett. "Can we meet? Just you and me. No lawyers." I didn't respond right away. The weight of the betrayal settled in my stomach like cold lead. I hadn't just been fired. I'd been deliberately sacrificed in a corporate chess game. I called Travis Hendricks. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Did Trevant try to introduce you to anyone from Veritas Capital recently?" A pause. Then, "How did you know?" "They brought in some guy, Thomas, during our quarterly review. Said he was a strategic advisor. asked a lot of questions about our future needs. Confirmation. They'd paraded Veritas representatives in front of my clients while I was still working there, still believing I was building something that mattered. More calls revealed the same pattern. Quiet introductions. Meetings arranged behind my back. Consultants digging for weaknesses, testing how replaceable I might be. By the end of the day, I'd confirmed at least 6 of my major accounts had been handed off, covertly, to Veritas. I finally texted Everett back. No meeting necessary. I understand the Veritas situation completely. His reply was quick. It was a business decision, Darren. Nothing personal. But it was personal. 9 years of relationships. Knowing my clients' kids' names, their vacation spots. Answering calls on weekends and holidays. And in the end, all of it had been reduced to a simple obstacle in a corporate transaction. I closed my laptop and looked out at the Kansas City skyline from my new office. The view here was different, clearer. Grantley had already signed contracts with 11 of my former clients, nearly $5 million in annual revenue, and more were on the way. Not because I recruited them, but because in this business, trust follows people, not logos, not corporate strategies. Trevant hadn't just lost a salesman. They'd lost the foundation their entire growth was built on. And the worst part? They still didn't understand why 0.3 weeks after joining Grantley, I received an invitation to speak at the Midwest Financial Services Conference. The panel topic? Building client loyalty in a transactional market. The irony wasn't lost on me. I accepted, not for ego or exposure, but because I knew exactly who would be sitting in that audience. Industry peers, potential clients, and most importantly, Trevant's leadership team. Everett never missed this conference. Neither did the board. At Grantley, I finally had the resources Trevant never offered me. 2 dedicated analysts, full marketing support, and most importantly, an equity partnership. Every client I brought in wasn't just commission anymore. It was ownership. It was building something I truly had a stake in. I spent the next month preparing, not with flashy slides or rehearsed anecdotes, but with data. Long nights with my analysts paid off. We compiled performance metrics from every client who had followed me from Trevant to Grantley. The numbers spoke for themselves. Service response times cut by 53%, implementation costs down by 30%, and client satisfaction scores up by 22 points. It wasn't about proving I was right. It was about showing what happens when a company values relationships over transactions. The morning of the conference, I reviewed my notes one last time. No theatrics, no naming names, just facts. Professional, measured, devastating. As I walked into the hotel ballroom, I immediately spotted Everett huddled with 2 board members near the coffee station. His face tightened the moment he saw me. I gave him a polite nod and moved on. The panel began with the usual questions about market trends and technological disruption. When my turn came, I spoke plainly about what clients truly value. In an age where everything is automated and digitized, personal accountability has become the rarest commodity, I said. Companies often mistake client relationships for corporate assets. But they're not. They're trust agreements between people, and they require constant reinforcement. I presented my data as case studies, without ever naming Trevant. Clients who switched firms had seen immediate, measurable improvements. The lesson isn't about retention bonuses or contractual obligations, I concluded. It's about understanding that when you treat relationship managers as interchangeable parts, clients will prove just how wrong that assumption is. During the Q&A, a young analyst I didn't recognize asked the question everyone had been silently waiting for. Isn't your recent move from Trevant to Grantley, along with several major clients, exactly the scenario companies fear when deciding how much autonomy to give relationship managers? The room went silent, and I could feel Everett's eyes burning into me from across the room. That's a fair question, I replied. But consider the alternative. Trevant didn't lose those clients because I took them. They lost them because they failed to understand what those clients actually valued. No one followed me out of personal loyalty alone. They followed because their needs were better met through my approach to service, an approach my former employer decided was no longer aligned with their vision. I paused, meeting Everett's eyes across the room. Every company has the right to change direction, and every client has the right to decide whether that direction serves their interests. The market is brutally efficient that way. After the panel, 3 more former Trevant clients approached me. By the end of the conference, Grantley had signed letters of intent with 5 new accounts, worth another $2.7 million in annual revenue. That evening, I checked the financial news. Trevant had announced a restructuring. Brian Ellsworth was pursuing other opportunities. The Veritas acquisition was officially dead. Their stock had fallen another 8%. I closed my laptop without satisfaction or triumph. Just the quiet certainty of being proven right by the market itself. The lesson had been delivered. Whether they learned from it was no longer my concern. 6 months after my termination, I stood in Grantley's largest conference room, surrounded by my team and the firm's leadership. Behind me, a single slide displayed our quarterly results. $8.4 million in new business, 70% from former Trevant clients. Michael Grantley himself raised a glass. The best acquisition we've ever made. And we didn't even have to buy a company to get it. Polite laughter rippled through the room. I smiled but didn't join in. For me, this wasn't about celebration. It was about validation. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Trevant Corp announces CEO transition. Everett Stanton steps down amid continued revenue challenges. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Some victories don't need an audience. Later that afternoon, an email came from Alicia Winters, the young woman Brian had once tried to position as my replacement. I've been let go, along with most of the sales team. Any chance Grantley is hiring? I forwarded it to HR with a note. Worth interviewing. Not her fault what happened. As I was leaving the office, my assistant handed me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Everett. You were right. I put transaction above relationship. Cost the company everything. If you're ever willing to have coffee, I'd appreciate the chance to apologize in person. I folded the note and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Maybe someday, but not yet. That evening, driving home, I passed Trevant's old building. Workers were taking down the sign. The local business journal had reported they were downsizing to a smaller office in the suburbs. I didn't slow down, didn't take a photo. I just drove on, eyes forward toward the life I was building on my own terms. 1 year to the day after Brian slid those termination papers across the table, I signed the documents making me a full partner at Grantley. The firm had grown 34% since my arrival. My client portfolio now represented nearly $20 million in annual revenue. I closed the folder containing the partnership agreement and looked out my office window at the Kansas City skyline. The same city, the same skyline, but everything else had changed. Rebecca walked in with 2 cups of coffee. Signed and official, she said. I nodded. Signed and official. She studied me. You don't look as happy as I expected. Just thinking, I said. Not about Trevant, about what we're building here. About doing it right this time. That morning, I had approved the hiring of 3 new account managers, each with the same profit-sharing structure I'd negotiated for myself. No one here would build something, only to have it taken away. That was my first act as partner. My phone buzzed. A message from Travis Hendress. Congratulations on the partnership. Knew you'd land on your feet. Thanks to clients like you, I replied. No, he corrected. Thanks to you being who you are. We just followed the value. After hanging up, I picked up the framed gift Rebecca had given me last Christmas. A simple quote on parchment. The best revenge is massive success. I placed it back on the credenza, face down. That chapter was closed. Then I opened my calendar and booked lunch with Everett. Not to gloat, not to relive the past, but because sometimes the final step in moving forward is letting go of the weight of what came before. That evening, Rebecca and I headed to our son's band performance, something I never would have made time for in my old life. Some losses clear the way for greater victories. Some fires burn away what needs to go. And I had never been more certain of that truth than I was today.